Gosh darn it, Keiki Akutami. You've done it again. Another peak variation of what it truly means to be the strongest. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do mean to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact, the Shatter's gas. The Shatter's gas. It's straight, it's burning down the house, but it's keeping my feet warm. So ultimately, we are doing fantastic. So I'm very excited. I don't want to waste too much time. For reference, the live reaction, you can check it over on Patreon for those $1 a month. Or become a member, so those videos, like check out the live reaction, was 36 minutes. It was 36 minutes. So you know we're gonna be here for a little bit. So let's not waste more time. Let's hop right into chapter 18 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, the Worthy. And this chapter, it's like Keiki took the character and fight balance of chapter, like, what was it? They weren't in 17. It's like he took the chapter and character balance of chapter 16 that was between these two battles, flipped it on its head, and still made it peak all around. So ultimately, hopping into the chapter itself, we learn a little bit more about the ring of Rika Orimoto, or the ring of Yuta Okkotsu, or the ring that is currently now in the possession of Tsurugi Okkotsu, as we find out. The cursed tool registered to the Gojo clan's storehouse. It contains the vast reserves of cursed energy belonging to Okkotsu Yuta, along with the will of Orimoto Rika. Now, admittedly, I'm a little tiny bit confused by this for a couple reasons. And I think I can get into them right now on the first page because they don't really address it too... Well, actually, you know what? I'll save it... No, I'll go into a little bit here, and then I'll go into the other half of it in a page or two. So, the main thing that confused me about this is the will of Orimoto Rika. The will, but not the husk. That seems to be interesting. So, there's always been hot debate on, like, how Rika really works, right? In the original series. Like, is she Yuta's curse technique? Is she not? Is she truly just an external storage system? If so, can she be transferred to other people? Or is it tied to the original Yuta? There's a whole bunch of ambiguity, wiggle the fingers about, and think about it complexly in terms of original series Rika. And now that we do have a continuation and sequel series, even if these aren't the official translations, I can get a better grasp of how Rika works. So at least the husk, like the literal physical manifestation of Rika, where presumably a majority of this design for the head comes from, it's gone. It's not here. It's not real. The ring, while it acted as a conduit to summon the fully manifested Rika for Yuta, who specifically had a direct external connection to the husk, could store curse techniques and curse energy inside of it, and all that, that's gone. It's just flat out gone. The ring now acts as the new battery, the new husk, because seemingly enough, the unmanifested Rika, especially the fully manifested Rika that we see in original JJK for Yuta, contained, like, essentially the excess stores of his cursed energy and didn't actually have the boundless amounts of his cursed energy, or the original boundless amount of cursed energy from before. It's debatable, it's weird, but essentially, that's how that worked. The husk is gone. But we also know the husk, at least, like, retained dregs? Pieces, bits of Rika Orimoto's will. That's why it was able to awaken in Sendai, open the third eye, and why it was presumably able to awaken RCT, and obviously why it still sounds like Rika. It still essentially is like, maybe not a direct copy of the original Rika Orimoto, because we know her soul left at the end of Zero, but essentially her base personality, reactions, and instincts are all still there. And thusly, she's able to be bound to the will of the bound to the ring, or initially bound to the husk in original Zero, now bound to the ring. And I'm assuming essentially this Rika acts as like an account manager for the CE stored in the ring. If this makes any sense at all or doesn't, let me cook a little bit. The reason I say account manager is because it's clear that she acts, at least by last chapter, it's clear that she acts as like a verification system, right? Whoever holds the ring, if they are of Yuta's descent and they need help while currently in possession of the ring, Rika Orimoto, the will that remains inside the ring, can essentially act as a question, a verification. Hey, are you a descendant of Yuta Okkotsu? You are. Do you want help? You do. Okay, I will help you. That gives them full access to the reserves of cursed energy stored inside the ring. The thing that's impressive to me about this ring, though, is that it is just a ring, right? Notably, this isn't like it became a cursed tool after extended fueling and exposure. But remember, overflowing a object with cursed energy would have been bad regularly, like would break weapons and stuff. And obviously the ring isn't being used for combat, it's being used as a necklace, but still the fact that it was able to contain so much cursed energy, and notably didn't seem to contain so much cursed energy until Rika gave it to Tsurugi, is very interesting. No one notes the ring having extreme amounts of cursed energy, at least earlier on in the narrative, but now obviously it is the source of all that. So Rika Orimoto's will that existed inside the husk exists, but now is transplanted to the ring to act as an account manager / verifier for whoever holds the ring in order to give access to the boundless amounts of cursed energy that Yuta stored into it. We'll go into Yuta storing into it later, and this, that, and the third. The question is, though, how much of this boundless cursed energy is truly boundless? How much of Rika can truly be manifested? And is this Tsurugi's final form, essentially? I do wonder. Because if the husk is truly entirely gone, and this mask that he's wearing, as we'll see, it is truly just a mask, like he himself was transformed, he's literally just wearing Rika's face, how much more can he go? Because with the whole idea of Rika essentially acting as an account manager, can she, take over more control? Heck, even the way that Tsurugimoto works is definitely very questionable, as we'll get into soon enough. But with it being the case, Tsurugi has the ring, he has the cursed energy stored inside the ring, he's adding that to presumably his base heavily restricted stats. And the reason I'm guessing he's wearing Rika as a mask and not properly fusing with her is because he still needs his base heavily restriction abilities. Rika's essentially just adding on top of that. Where you could arguably say that Maki and Toji, if they were to ever get any sort of cursed energy, would just immediately nerf them because they only have the heavenly restriction state because of the absolute removal of cursed energy. I would assume it kinda, for right now, at least for Tsurugi, probably works as a mech suit of sorts. If I had to represent it, think of a very thin, it's probably thick because of the amount of cursed energy, but think of a very thin layer over Tsurugi that is acting to buff his defense, his offense, his speed, all that. He's moving a whole lot faster and stronger than he was before because of the insane amount of cursed energy that's filling around him, but I don't think Tsurugi actually himself obtained any cursed energy, or else that would probably jack up his heavenly restriction even more. So, very interesting thing, and we get the crazy statement at the start. The power of the Queen of Curses is in the blood. Though admittedly, with the idea that the ring contains the vast reserves of cursed energy belonging to Okotsu Yuta, I don't actually think the Queen of Curses power was maintained in terms of the original boundless cursed energy that Yuta accidentally created by binding Rika Orimoto's will to the husk. I don't think that's there. I think there is a set amount of cursed energy in this ring, but of course it's probably going to be a lot considering what we learn about the ring, or at least what is assumed to be the state of the ring. As we see that Tsurugimoto is going absolutely crazy, but Maru is going absolutely crazy back. I love this panel of Maru with the pure whited out eyes, but his third eye is still fully cognizant, and it's even looking up at Tsurugimoto, and Tsurugimoto gets put in the spin cycle by Maru, straight, and then Tsurugi gets spun in mid-air. Hold on, let me see. When I offered to work, it was Saki-san pushed that saying Maharaga would appear. Oh, okay, I thought that was an old statement. I didn't realize that came out with this chapter. But we see, in fact, I'm scared, but we see that Maru is essentially putting Tsurugimoto in the spin cycle of Doom, Despair, and Everything Unfair, as they are in the middle of the air, and all the debris around them, from presumably Maru throwing the multiple vehicles into the building, is what's acting as their quote-unquote platforms. So Maru does seemingly have absolute battlefield control, while Tsurugimoto has none of it. But obviously, with stats like Tsurugimoto's, that doesn't really matter. As we see, Tsurugimoto sees a pathway, essentially, and then leaps from stone to stone to stone to stone to stone, grabs onto one of the stones as they leap, and then domes Maru with it, just straight, and then slams him straight on the dome. Showing that even with the environmental distortion, the consistent shifting of the perspective and the environment, it doesn't really matter. This is presumably, once again, like I mentioned, a combination of Tsurugi's just innate physical prowess. Note that Maki and Toji could also probably do something like this, just because, they have the insane physical prowess and the ability to move freely in midair already, so changing the perspective on them probably wouldn't work all too well. And on top of that, it's Rika acting as at least somewhat of a basis and or a link, and for the longest time Rika was a big gargantuan flying husk, so naturally their understanding of freeform mid-air movement is probably better than most. Though it is important to note here that Tsurugi still, even as Tsurugimoto, does seemingly require foothold still. Initially here, in this panel, they don't seem to have any footholds as they've just been thrown, but they seem to grab onto a stone, land onto a stone, and leap from stone to stone. Meanwhile, Maki and Toji could just leap off the air itself. It doesn't seem like Tsurugi has that level of perception just yet. But with it being the case, after doming Maru immediately, Rikamoto, or supposedly seemingly just the Rika half of Rikamoto, or Tsurugi, my brain, okay, let me get a little better here. I want to call them Tsurugimoto because I think that sounds cool. My brain is saying Rikarugi because Rika and Tsurugi. But like my brain is also trying to come up with like a third new nickname. I don't know why. But with it being the case, we see let me point out this though real quick. In fact, let me see, can I expand even a little bit bigger? Yeah, we can. So this is why I say when I don't think Rika has actually properly infused herself with Tsurugi in order to avoid Jack Ambus having a restriction. You can see that the Rika mask here is just that, a mask. You see all of Tsurugi's jaw, you can still see his ears here, you can see his neck. He hasn't even been fused. Heck, you can even see the underlying part of his hair, right? Like the black here is not his outfit, it's his hair underneath the flowing mane of the mask of Rika. Which does raise an interesting question. What would happen if Maru were to remove the mask? And obviously, there's another question that will quickly get brought up that we'll figure out later. But Rika quickly goes on to say, this is so much fun. It's like a roller coaster. And hey, as a person who also really loves roller coasters, she kind of right them. And we see that naturally Tsurugi isn't all too happy with, Rika. His step? How does that work? Because like really, original Rika's gone. But I guess like in the concept of this Rika's mind, this is like her step grandson. So we see Tsurugi say, shut it! As he does not want to really engage. He does want the power. He doesn't want to deal with the account manager. He wants the funds without actually having to deal with the funds manager. But with it being the case, Rika doesn't necessarily care. At least not all too much. This does raise the question though, how does the fusion function? I'm calling it Tsurugimoto, but like, how does it work? Is Tsurugi in control? Is Rika in control? Is it a weird mix of both? For any of my people who played Undertale, Master Suppose for Undertale, which is now 10 years old? It was recently turned 10 at like the end of 2025. So like 10 years old, but there is a set of characters in that game, both Kara and Azriel, who end up in a very presumably similar situation to this, where they merge, quote unquote, but both are still able to control the body. I'm unsure if both were able to speak though, but both were able to manipulate and move the body and presumably speak at the same time. But also with the Rika thing clearly being a mask, I wonder if Tsurugi's mouth is underneath talking, and that's why Rika's able to like essentially overspeak him, because the mask itself isn't actually tied to Tsurugi's vocal cord, just as the power itself didn't actually infuse itself with Tsurugi's body. Maybe overthinking that though. But we see that naturally Maru, after getting domed, does take damage, no RCT, and is like, what is this? Why does he look like that? What happened to him? Why am I getting fried? As naturally he was not expecting this at all. But then he finally clicks in onto it. Or, my bad. But he clicks onto it and says, the source of this power is his grandfather's ring? And this does raise a question. I'll get into the next panel. Don't worry. I will. But this does raise a question pretty much immediately. Is his grandfather's ring? Okay, the source of the power is grandfather's ring. What happens if Maru removes it, right? Whether through like actually lunging and grabbing it, using his technique. What happens if Maru's like, oh, that's a pretty nice ring you got there, buckaroo. I think I'm gonna cap that real quick. And then he just takes it away from Tsurugi. What happens? Would the transformation immediately be undone? Would that be the way to neutralize the transformation? Or would it destabilize it? I don't know. It's very weird. But the extra thing that's weird on top of that, or not weird, but interesting, his cursed energy is off the charts. It's beyond the capacity of any normal person. This is the work of a sorcerer with extraordinary cursed energy, accumulated over years, no, decades. Now this is the interesting part. And it raises the question of like, how much cursed energy truly is stored in that ring, and how much is truly being burnt by Tsurugi's actions here? Once again, if he's not properly infused with the cursed energy, is he burning any of it? Is it truly acting as like once again, like a thin layer around him, kind of like an Iron Man suit that's amplifying his base stats, but not actually infusing with them? How many years was Yuta doing this? And notably, this does raise the question of that, well, not the question of just for Yuta, but it raises a question I've been asking for a while now For our heavy hitters, specifically, right? You can definitely argue maybe some of the grade 1s or lower got maybe more buffs after the Shinjuku raid anyway. But, like, for a Yuji, for a Yuta, for a Maki, for a Akari, how much stronger could they really have gotten in a peaceful world? Think about it like this. There was, at least so far, unless we are going to find out, there was actually, Diomen Dukana, who was secretly stronger than Sukuna the entire time, and Yuji fought him off by himself, or Yuta fought him off by himself, or they collectively jumped him as a format, or something like that. The big question I do wonder for Yuta, and Maki, and Akari, and Yuji, is, did they have any reason to use their extreme stats and strength, other than training to maintain it? Like, how much stronger would they have gotten, really, than their teen selves? Like, obviously, Gojo gets massively stronger by the time he's an adult, but notably, even awakened teen Gojo just didn't have everything yet. He didn't have a domain expansion. He didn't have 24/7 RCT, or 24/7 RCT, or 24/7 Infinity. He didn't have any of that. Meanwhile, I'm not going to say that Yuta peaked at the end of JJK, but, like, EOS Yuta kind of already has all he needs. He has the domain, he has multiple techniques. Who is he fighting to get stronger? Same thing with Yuji. He has a domain, has multiple techniques. Other than further domain refinement, what else is Yuji really going to get? Akari, same thing. Maki, especially. Like, can these characters even get any stronger, or would they have? And if not, it would explain why Yuta just went to dumping every single bit of his reserves into the ring. Because at that point, there'd be no better use for all that power, and better to do that than let it go to waste. It is very interesting, though, that he was able to do that, the ring was able to maintain itself, and I do genuinely wonder how much cursed energy would last, or how much this level of cursed energy is going to last. I wonder if we're going to see it run out in this battle, or if we're going to find out that it could basically never run out, because it is that much. If Yuta truly start, let's say Yuta started at what? 30, let's say he got to his 20s, right? Let's say early 20s, or at age 20, he was like, there's no other threats around. I might as well at least do something with all this cursed energy that's going away day by day. And he started pumping it into the ring over and over and over and over and over again. Remember, Yuta already, assuming he pumped like everything into the ring, but let's say he pumped a fourth of it just because he needed to keep 75% for the rest of the day. Yuta already had a little under half the cursed energy Sukuna did. If he poured 25%, let's even go even lower. Let's say he poured 10% of his cursed energy into the ring every single day. There would be multiple Sukuna's worth of cursed energy in that ring after the first year. Not to talk of the multiple decades that Maru's talking about. So I do genuinely wonder, how much cursed energy is in that ring? How much juice did Yuta pour into that thing? But regardless, we see Maru go for seemingly the confusion tactic. I'm not going to say like confuse Ray, but basically a confuse Ray, or at least a confuse Eye, on Tsurugimoto, essentially hoping to disorient them and maybe get them to stop fighting. But naturally, Tsurugimoto is covering Tsurugi's eyes, and also, well, let's think about it. Rika doesn't have any eyes until she awakens. So naturally, this seemingly sight-based ability does not work at all. And Rika simply grabs him, and then, but then again, I'm not sure how much of this is Rika and how much of this is Tsurugi. I don't know what the control dynamic is, but it does seem a little bit more primal and bestial as Maru gets grabbed by the collar? Vest? I think he gets grabbed by the vest and then domed immediately. Notably though, shout outs to Maru. The stone that he takes here actually does more damage than this headbutt, because this headbutt only staggers him back, and then we see Tsurugimoto ham him off the platform they were standing on in midair, straight down into the water below. But notably, look at this. Outside of a little seemingly blood spurt, Tsurugi ate the headbutt and the punch. You don't even see any damage residuals from the punch. And naturally, we see Maru just begin to think, right? Because he's like, oh, man, bro, I was watching him. What do you mean he had years of cursed energy from one of the strongest characters in the verse poured into him at this moment, bro? What do you mean? But, speaking of all this, in spite of the massive answer he got, Maru, he's not like keeping up just yet. But he is doing a whole lot better than you'd think for a guy with possibly multiple Sukuna's worth of cursed energy, who also has a heavily restriction buff. Pretty darn good for Maru, brody. I've seen people say, oh, Maru's like grade 1, and like probably, but still, strongest grade 1 we've ever seen guys on it, because he's putting in work. But we see that naturally he's thinking, that didn't work. He's ignoring my technique altogether. He's aiming to crush me with nothing but brute force and the power of that ring. And that's what I talk about, like, it's probably like a stacking effect, right? It's probably Tsurugi's base physical stats on top of whatever buff the ring would have gave him. I don't think they mix, because I feel like the mix would probably jack Tsurugi's abilities up. But that also raises the question of how much of this is Tsurugi. Like, is Tsurugi really fighting this, like, big swing beast? Like, this doesn't have the same level of grace or technique that Tsurugi usually fights with. So if anything, I bet Rika is at least influencing how he's fighting, if I had to hazard a guess. But we do see that Rika is willing enough to, give Tsurugi these moments to Ore Farm as he leaps down from the sky, really to leap up into the air, kind of, sort of, because it looks like these buildings are upside down. But Tsurugi says, "I'm sorry, Maru. I can't hold back. Not if I wish to win." So that does seem to imply that he wasn't going all out just yet. And that makes sense. He probably is still just barely getting used to this new level of strength. Imagine if you spontaneously got 10 times stronger. Imagine that. Like notably, I've gotten stronger in certain ways. Like, hold on. I've gotten stronger in certain ways over the course of, like, a year, singularly. Or, like, a year and now, what? Like, 4 months. And even I'm occasionally thrown off guard by my own strength. And I'm not no crazy technical fighter like Tsurugi is. Imagine someone of his level of combat proficiency suddenly getting such a massive stat boost. It probably would take him a second to at least adjust and probably be able to use his new stats appropriately. But we see that ultimately, Maru, when faced with this adversity, is like, "Boy, what on earth is you talking about, Grody?" And he says, "Don't apologize." And suddenly we see the different plants and things begin to grow from the ground. As, seemingly enough, the water that they're fighting in is drained to reveal a massive, massive forest grown in an instant from the many different plants around the area. And Maru hits the Ore Farm of Doom with a third eye glowing in the darkness, as he says, "After all, we're in the same position, where ultimately they can't hold back anymore. They need to go all out for what they're fighting for." So, in terms of this first half of the chapter, as Tsurugimoto looks on, like the chapter literally could have been what, 4-page, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like a 6-page because of the double spread. This could have been a 6-page chapter, and I give the chapter worthiness right here. Right? That's how good this chapter is. Because I love the dynamic that's already being established here. I love seeing, 1, the sheer power of Tsurugimoto. 2, the good variation on the fighting style, right? Depending on how active or deep or truly mixed you think the fusion is, this is either a great display of Rika's combative abilities on top of Tsurugi's skill bolstered by Rika's combative abilities, or a mix of both. And I think that's fantastic. It's great to see. It's good to see that Yuta did make a contingency plan like this, even as I do wonder, did he himself actually seal the 10 shadows away, or was that just a group decision that he had no involvement in? It's clear he did truly care heavily for the future and protecting it in a way that Gojo would have wanted by preparing his ring for his descendants to use. I do like that. I do like seeing that Rika, especially, is seemingly immune to a lot of the things that Maru can do, because they're all perception/stat based, and when you can drastically outstat somebody, it's cool to see that sometimes these silly little Haxiyars don't even matter, and they get absolutely annihilated, even in the JJK universe. And I'm also very excited to see what these two do now that they're no longer holding back, quote unquote. Now that they have finally reached a position where they're like, "I like this guy. He's cool. He's awesome. He's even kind of handsome. But unfortunately, I gotta fry you, Grody." And I'm very excited to see how these two get to frying each other. Obviously, though, still no Maizo appearance and still no Yuji appearance. So, clock is ticking. How long is a short run series if this thing's only meant to be 3 volumes? I don't know, Brody, but it's looking real rough for both Itadori and Maizo, actually appearing in the manga at this point. Though you could argue either could show up at any moment. But speaking of showing up and showing out at any moment, yo, hold on. Let me hit this one real quick. Hold up. Gotta put the blade of worthiness down. Hold on. Let me hit this real quick. Hold on. Let me back up. Let me move the chair to the side. Hold on. Let me hit this. Dog. Look at him. Look, he knows he's look at the face. Look at the Mog. Look at the Mew of he's hitting the. Hold on. Typically whenever I do, he's hitting the. We should have known he was in danger then. And we see, in particular, Dabura even notes the extreme predilection for aura farming spontaneously, as he literally notes his aura, or. Stupid. But Dabura literally says, his entire aura has shifted. And we see Maharaga posted up on this building. And you know what? Once again, I recently made a video talking about Maharaga and how I think Maharaga is this perfect example of humanity, both in like a literal sense that he's probably a human or the representation of a human within the Ten Shadows technique, but also the never-ending adaptability and the consistent danger that comes from a human that's allowed to survive and grow and evolve. But I also love this display of humanity for Maharaga, very specifically going out of its way to Aura Farm. If that isn't the most human thing a person can do, because like, let's be honest, Maharaga should be sound go mode, right? This is one of the people in his ritual. He needs to get it going. It does not matter. He said, "Oh, that fourth wheel spin hit. Oh, my paycheck just hit, Brody. I'm about to go crazy on you." Because you never hit, and like notably, he's not even just hitting the, he's hitting the, like he's looking down. He lifted his chin up to look down with no eyes. And another thing I love the size of the wings. I do like, you could definitely argue it would be even cooler if it were spread out in like an X formation, which they kind of are, but like a more like proper X, not like an X like this. But still, the way the four wings just spread out the wheel in the middle, a gorgeous shot. And specifically seeing in this moment, like the visual storytelling here is immaculate too. From Maharaga standing above Dabura in the deepest of darkness, meanwhile Dabura's back is illuminated by the light. Maharaga's facing us, but he is the representation of the endless adaptation and darkness of humanity up against the light, yet the back, the strength, the foundation of the Silmurians, bro. Like, oh, it's so good. And we see that Dabura's like, this entire aura shifted, but unfortunately, I've literally made auroras. And he goes to point. Notably, I do wish we got to see the auroras that were shown in chapter 16. I wish we got to see them show up again, but they don't make it a single appearance this chapter. But we see that Dabura points, goes to use his light technique, and we see the light cut into Maharaga. There is something oddly hilarious about seeing Maharaga seemingly like, it's like, obviously he's aura farming, right? Like, it's all to look cool, and the visual storytelling of it all. But I also do like Maharaga's like stance here initially, like this sort of like, because it seems different. Like you may argue he's leaned forward here, but especially with the way his head is like backing up like this, like I explained the Mew difference, the Mewtwo, if you will. I like how in this moment he like leans forward. It's like, how do I put this? How do I put this in a way that makes sense? I don't know about y'all, but like, in fact, here, just look at my arm. Look at my arm right now. You know. It's all right. It's there. It's fine. It's cool. But there's just something oddly satisfying about engaging it and suddenly, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. See how it doesn't change? It's that idea that like Maharaga, it's almost Maharaga taking a deep breath. It doesn't even have a nose, mind you, but taking a deep breath and be like, like it's getting ready for the next stage of a battle. For any of my people who's competed in like literally anything, whenever, or not even competed in anything, I think everyone's had a moment where right before doing something intense, you take a deep breath. Just to centralize yourself, just to focus yourself in the moment, just to... That's what it seems like Maharaga's doing, that straight. Like he's exhaling in this moment. If anything, this is the inhale. This right here is the inhale when he's in darkness. He just... And then here, when the light comes down from when Dabura goes to strike him again, the exhale, he leans forward, he relaxes his shoulders, he hunches, and we see the light does converge on Maharaga. It hits him, it goes to cut into him, it's devious, it's dangerous, it's diabolical, it's next... Boom! Boom! Brody. Bro, yo. Someone get me this man's arm routine, please. Look at the gains, bro. Look at the gains. He looks so immaculate. He looks so jacked and juicy. You want slick, Yuji Osaka Sensei? I know what you are. Huh? I know what you are. Yeah, I know you're making just a W, but like literally that is the like. Outside of the fact that you can barely see Akari's other fist here, that is the pose. Even, like, if the only thing that would make this scene even more one-to-one reference is if Maharaga was, like, smiling more forward rather than just flexing through it. But I do love that too, right? I love the idea of Maharaga's adaptation. Just flat, like, a lot of people myself included, was assuming that Maharaga's adaptation here would kind of be like his adaptation to Sukuna's slashes. Notably, Maharaga didn't just become immune to cutting, at least not immediately. After the first wheel spin, he just, boom, he knocked it away with the Sword of Extermination. He was able to perceive them and then knock away the slashes. So I, mainly for upscale, was hoping that Maharaga would become reflective, right? Like, the reason the light wouldn't work is because it just bounced off. But no, Maharaga's straight immune. You see the light go to cut into him, but it like hard stops, cuts on his body, and then he flexes hard enough. He's straight yeens, something hard enough to burst the light off of his body. And naturally, we see Dabura being like, huh? Because notably, people don't usually just survive that. And that is crazy to see Maharaga's adaptation be complete. Now, of course, this is bad. Seemingly. It's gonna get worse. As we see Dabura look on in absolute despair, terror, double, like, you know it's bad. Not when you can't just have one exclamation point, but two. But you know it's even more bad when you can't just have one exclamation point, but two. But then they're the blocky exclamation points. He is genuinely bamboozled. And we see Maharaga be like, hey, you want to see something cool? And immediately goes to KH2 reversal around Dabura. But Dabura, unfortunately, he is in fact engaged in the game right now. He turns, takes a step back, and then what I assume, and honestly I'd love to see this animated, because if I had to hazard a guess, right, to exemplify the motions here, Maharaga goes in for Dabura's left, presumably to go in and lead into the slash, right? So Maharaga basically, I need a shorter sword. I was gonna grab one of my regular swords, but I'm gonna take this. So Maharaga essentially goes in like this. Goes in like this and gets ready. Hold on, in fact, I'm sliding the wrong way. He goes in like this. Maharaga, Dabura would be here. Goes into but Dabura in response pivots. Seemingly from the shoulder he pivots from. He pivots off his right foot. Right, from a basketball play. He pivots off his right foot, sets himself, and then as Maharaga unsheaths the Sword of Extermination, which I never really realized he could do that. I always thought it was just not being drawn. No, this is a genuine little shink. He can like sheath and unsheath it. He unsheaths the Sword of Extermination, but Dabura, he pivots on his right foot, squats and leaps, like he lunges straight for Dabura's, or not Dabura's face. He like jumps straight at Maharaga before he can actually get the sword swing off, and goes to beam his dome open. And once again, I can't help but find myself glazing Dabura's fighting style, bro. I love the way he leaps full body into it, puts his both hands on Maharaga's face, puts his clawed feet on Maharaga's shoulder, and presumably his pectorals. Like, it just looks so bestial. But now, in context, I completely understand why Dabura fights the way that he does. Well, I wouldn't say it's childish, right? Because it still is very bestial. It still is very, like, I feel like primal may be the word for it, just because of like how much he puts his full body into everything, and how almost there's not much technique behind a lot of Dabura's movements or his fighting style. But I think there is good reason for that gets established in this chapter. But regardless of all that, as we'll get into that eventually, Dabura does seem to still be able to compete with Dabura does seem to still be able to compete with Maharaga speed-wise. In fact, even outpace him, as Maharaga does do the sidestep, unsheath the sword, but Dabura is able to lunge in, like I said, pivoting off his right foot, lunging in, and squatting all over Maharaga's face, and then immediately goes to beam him. Now, this could be a case of just light, but as I'm now starting to believe what I thought was my friend is huffing copium, it may be the solid light constructs are also a manifestation of blank, the black technique of the Deskunte clan that we can't get a name for in English. Maybe, because these are solid, seemingly, at least they look solid based on their shapes, but they simply go through Maharaga. They don't affect him at all. He's straight. Big cheese in Dabura's face, and Dabura's looking on like, Gangaruni, what? It didn't work? And then he immediately gets, huh? What does this look like? What does this look like? This is a reference too. I got the Akari reference. What does this look like? I know this is, hold on. In fact, in fact, hold on. Give me 1 second. I know exactly what this reminds me of. Wait a minute. Yo, see, Yuji Osaka Sensei, you're slick, you're slick, you're slick. Well, I remember it. I remember. I was like, this is ringing such a strong bell to me. Except this, unlike the one I'm thinking of, this one actually connected. But hold on, hold on, hold on. I know ball, I know ball. Give me a second, give me a second. I know ball, I know ball. Where is it? Is it the 70s? It may be the 70s. Okay, it's not the 70s. It's probably like the 75, 75. Yes. Here it is. Oh wait, no. It may be 74. Maybe 74. It's probably 74. Yeah, it's before the red. It's before the red. What this reminds me of, down to the hand post, to the swing, to the drawing of it all, and everything. What this reminds me of is, oh, but it's inverted. All right, that's interesting. It's inverted, and Toadi's palm is open. It reminds me of this. See, but it is perfectly mirrored. I thought they were like a straight 1-to-1 reference, like the Akari thing, but no. Look at these two images right here. This one is at close range and it actually does manage to slash Dabura's face open. Meanwhile, this one, it is at close range, but Gojo actually managed to teleport out of the way in time. But you can see from the swing to the arc of it, it is a perfect mirror, except, you know, Maharaga's hand is closed here and his bandages aren't drawn here. But you can see that they do make the exact same motion, but Mahoraga lands his slash directly on Dabura's face, just straight gashing his face open. Now, unfortunately, this does knock him down, seemingly. Now, you may be like, oh, Pencilman, no! The Dabura agenda! And it doesn't knock him down too far, it just puts him below 15-finger Yuji Kuna in terms of durability, which is not bad, considering very few characters in the verse are as bulky as 15-finger Yuji Kuna. You may be wondering, hey, why am I saying this? At the best, here, let me give you the best case scenario for Dabura, where we can write off this and the damage he takes in like a mostly kind of sort of positive light, as in, okay, that's fine. You could argue that Mahoraga, while Death Binding Vow Ant by Yuka Okotsu is stronger than the Wild Mahoraga Megami summoned, but weaker than Sukuraga. But the issue is, if it's weaker than Sukuraga, the fact that it was able to slash Dabura at all and the blade didn't just bounce off, that means he's less durable than Sukuna, who was in the exact same scenario. In fact, I'll even, lucky enough, I got time today. Let me go pull it up. Let me pull up the reason why this knocks Dabura down. Because, like, the best case scenario for Dabura is that all Mahoragas are uniform no matter what. Like, AP, stat-wise, like, you can't increase Maharaga's abilities or anything like that. You can't infuse it with anything. Mahoraga, you see what you get. You can't make it any stronger. But, let me see. Where is the instance I'm looking for? Here. Okay, nope, not that one. Sukuna dodges that one. Let me see. It is in 118? Yep, it's in 118. So, the instance I'm talking about is right here. This is the instance I'm talking about, where Mahoraga goes for a full body swing on Sukuna. Sukuna blocks it, no damage. It doesn't even cut Sukuna's clothes. That's how bulky Sukuna is, how good his curse energy reinforcement is. Meanwhile, Dabura does take a cut to the face, and he does, actually a cut in the face. The other comparison where Mahoraga does land a cut on somebody and actually does damage is chapter 230, probably 3? Yeah, okay, it is kind of shown in 3, but it's better shown in 2. So let me go back to 232 and the 232. This is the other instance where Gojo takes a cut from Mahoraga and does actually bleed from it, and like it's a significant notable cut. However, the reason this would still just put Dabura beneath both Gojo and Sukuna in terms of durability and just like sheer stats and reinforcement is because this is a giga amped, fully adapt or not fully adapted to infinity just yet. Well, actually, no, yeah. At this point, fully adapted to infinity. He needs a further adaptation and beyond that. But this is a fully adapted Sukuna Raga, summoned by the strongest character in the verse, and this is the most it does to Gojo. It literally never damages Gojo again outside the special slash. Gojo will literally go on to toy with it afterwards, physically. It's not at all in the same tier. It just got a lucky hit off because Gojo wasn't ready for it. And notably, this is a nerfed Gojo, right? Like a brain damage, low output, presumably lower durability, lower everything Gojo. Meanwhile, for all intents and purposes, Dabura might as well be fully fresh. And he takes a cut directly across the face, isn't able to react in time, and does get cut. So this does put him beneath both Gojo and even worse for Dabura, a 15-finger Sukuna. And the reason I say this is even worse is because at best this Sukuna is probably, or this Mahoraga is probably stronger than the one Megami summoned. if you assume that all Maharaga summons don't come automatically with the Death Binding Vow to Gege Anthem anyway. So, yeah. Yeah, not very good. Not very good. Yuka is nowhere near the same tier as Sukuna. The only hope in Cope you have, if you're a true Dabura Glacier and you want to say he still has comparable, just like raw physical stats to Gojo and Sukuna, your best hope is saying all Maharagas are uniform. But like, that's really, really hard to imagine. Like, we know that the summons of the 10 Shadows don't change too much, but like Myriad Elephant is a thing, right? Even if you go with the idea, which is confirmed by the way, that the only reason Nue was gigantic is because it was fused with Orochi. That's a redo added to the volume extra to give Orochi extra size, or to give Nue extra size. The issue with this is that Maharaga is being summoned by a much weaker character, and we do see another summon change without any sort of implementation of a Orochi buff, right? That is Myriad Elephant. We see Divine Dogs look bigger and different, even when they're not fully summoned. So Sukuraga is more likely much stronger than Yukaraga, and Yukaraga is able to damage Dabura. Not too much, and I know people are going to slander Dabura to the moon and back. I don't even have to look. I know people are slandering him to the moon and back for this chapter. But in this case, this is, dare I say, it's kind of just a flesh wound for Maharaga to get a free swing on Dabura like this, and this is all he does. It's actually pretty bad, and he's going to get way more than a free swing. He's actually not going to do all too much damage, but this also does knock Dabura down in terms of the strongest tier. It definitely puts him more in that like Ryu, arguably Kashimo tier, but Kashimo does seem to have an RCT of sorts, or at least an MBA or something, maybe, considering we see him heal his hand, because Dabura doesn't have a healing factor. He does not display RCT at all in this fight, just as Maru doesn't display it earlier. But with that being the case, we see that Daburaba? Where's Daburaba? We see Dabura get slashed, and then this completely throws him off his game, essentially. He gets hit, and he realizes he completely ignores my technique. And we see he immediately begins to backstab. This, I don't know about y'all, I'm peeping all the different references. We know that Gege was inspired by the anime in many ways for the manga, and it seems like Gege, who's still doing the storyboarding, is inspired again, because this backstep is very similar to the backstep. Actually, this may also just be another reference. Hold on, give me a sec. I forget if the backstep that I'm thinking of exists in the manga too. In fact, I can actually go right back to that set of chapters I was looking at, because it was the Jogo fight. That's not it. Here. Let me see. It's when he goes to do Maximum Meteor. Yeah, okay. It looks more, because of the direction of it, looks more like the anime, but chapter 115 of the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, we see the same kind of backstep move, essentially the skating across the ground move that Sukuna does here, replicated by Dabura here, except Maharaga is able to keep up this time and grabs something? I don't even know what he grabs here. It looks like he rips something off of something, and then beams Dabura over the head with it, showing that Dabura, where before he was able to seemingly react consistently and block to Maharaga, in this case, it seemingly can't. So does this mean Maharaga adapts stats? I unironically still don't think so. I mean, like, that doesn't make sense. You're gonna see in a sec why I don't think so by the end of the chapter. Also, just, you know, it doesn't actually do too much damage. It does bleed him a bit more, though. You can see it does draw a good chunk more blood. So Maharaga is able to keep up, and Maharaga is, in fact, now that he's winning, he's like, yeah, buddy! Yeah, buddy! He's geeked a little bit. Look at that smile, bro. He's so happy to be tweaking out on Dabura right now. But we see that Dabura now fully understands it. He understands it now, as he says, so this was your power. Endure an attack, then adapt to it. Does that spin mean the adaptation is complete? At this point, basically. Of course, remember, Maharaga is still adapting to the light technique. The question is, though, how much further is his adaptation going to go? Because notably, when it came to Infinity, Infinity was primarily a defensive technique with offensive applications, because blue and stuff like that. Like, Limitless was that. Meanwhile, Dabura hasn't used light defensively at all. So I do wonder if Maharaga is going to get an offensive adaptation against Dabura in specific. Like, he's going to be able to start, like, truly leaking darkness or something. I don't know what Maharaga's next adaptation will be on top of his existing adaptation to just be straight up immune to Dabura's technique. But Maharaga slams him over the head. Dabura gets concerned that the adaptation is complete. And notably, he starts getting overwhelmed, right? We see he does at least somewhat react. Maharaga goes to, like, just beam it. In fact, funnily enough, I'm sorry, I know y'all are probably like, stop going back to the original manga, but I can't help it. I'm seeing all these references now that I think about it more and more. So, let me go to chapter 1, is it 117? No, it's probably not 117. It's probably Yes, 118. I'm pretty sure it's 118. We see that Maharaga essentially goes to do the move he did against 15 Finger Yuji-Kuna, except unlike 15 Finger Yuji-Kuna before him, Dabura does actually manage to tank it a little bit, because we see this same move, right, where Maharaga goes back with this and essentially goes to backhand his opponent away. Sukuna does raise up and react in time in the same way that Dabura does. Dabura does raise up a block in time in order to block the backhand. He gets knocked back. But notably, unlike Sukuna, he doesn't get knocked through multiple buildings. So, like, Dabura upscale, but it's versus, like, a 15-finger Sukuna? It's a Yuji-Kuna? It's like, it's kind of weird. But this less adapted, presumably at best same strength, maybe even weaker Maharaga does send Sukuna flying through numerous buildings and immediately keep up with them. Meanwhile, you'll note that Dabura doesn't get sent flying, at least not by this hit, which would have sent, or which did send a Sukuna flying even when he blocked it. But naturally, Dabura is being overwhelmed for the first time. He's being met with the true challenge. And he sits here and begins to wonder, if this keeps up, am I out of options? Don't tell me. Am I going to lose? Dabura is facing the possibility of defeat. Now, I think at this point I must just flat out readily concede to my homeboy, who was explaining that, I think all the solid light constructs are, in fact, the blacked out technique. I don't think Dabura is using the light and the blacked out technique separately. They're probably interfused. I think, especially by the resolution that Dabura comes to the end of this chapter, unless he unlocks something crazy, like a domain expansion or a maximum technique or something, I think my friend was right. He was actually using both at the same time. I thought the light just included hard light constructs, but now, seemingly not. Because for him to immediately think he's out of options, that means he thinks that the Deskunte technique that he inherited, the ability to just give murderous intent physical form, that's not going to do anything. At least that's what he seems to think here. Though you could argue, as we'll see later on, this is just Dabura being pressed for the first time in his life and not really knowing how to deal with it at all. And typically, when stuff like that happens, the first time you are pressed, I can speak from experience on this, your brain, like, you don't think as clearly as you could. I am huffing copium, yes, but you don't think as clearly as you could. And as we see, Dabura begins to go into a flashback, which I also know he will be slandered for. This, I can sense, as much as I love this chapter, it's probably my favorite chapter in Modulo, which I know sounds crazy, but I really like Dabura. But I can smell the slander from here. I can hear it. I can see it in the stars. And no, I have not looked outside, nor is it nighttime by the time I'm reviewing this. But we see in a flashback that Dabura and Dura are hanging out. And Dura says, hey, don't you think it'd be better if you got along with the Deskuntans? And Dabura looks on and immediately gets sad and is like, do you not want me around, Dura? Which, you know what? The amount, like, admittedly, I have a couple introverted friends. And I always have, like, in terms of trying to push them to make even more friends, I'm always like, well, you probably should get along with some of your coworkers, or this, that, and the third, or, like, the rest of our cohort in some cases, because there were other people in our cohort, and they'd always look at me and be like, Pencil Man, do you not want to be friends anymore? I'm like, that's not what I said! That's not what I said. They would immediately get sad. Just like Dabura, they'd immediately get sad. You'll be like, no, that is not at all. You are stretching things further beyond. I'm like, I'm more than happy to be with your friend. I'm literally hanging out with you right now. Please, I'm just wondering, you need more. You need more friends. You need more human interaction. You're a human being, bro. It is that same concern. And we see they're carrying something. And as Dabura glooms out, Dura has my exact same reaction of, huh, wait, no! And he says, I didn't mean it like that. I'm grateful to have you with me. And we see that Dabura explains, well, it does pain me to say it. I can't really tolerate anyone else. And I think that is Dabura speaking, mainly because the text bubble isn't connected to Dura here. And we see that Dura says, it ought to be tough to be isolated among your own people, isn't it? Not to mention the whole ordeal with your sister. So this does confirm that Dabura and Dura, who seem a lot younger here than by the time we saw them as adults, Dabura's strength got him ousted or highlighted by the Deskunte chieftain immediately. I'm not sure if it was like a from birth thing or something, or just when he was young, they saw his strength, they saw his potential, realized, okay, this guy has a weakness in his sister, let's put the death curse on her immediately just so this guy doesn't rebel. And he's had that on him since forever. And we see that Dabura explains his differences, or at least the difference caused by his extreme abnormal levels of strength. As he says, the pride of Deskuntan warriors soars through the clouds. I'm sure they'd be displeased if I was among his warriors. Now, his warriors, I don't know. This is TCB translation, it's not officials, but to be fair, officials can also be a mess too. But I'm sure they'd be displeased if I was among the warriors, not necessarily his warriors, because I mean, maybe they talk about the chieftain, but like they say the Skunte warriors, so it is strange. But regardless, they're talking about Dabura and his place in the world, or realistically, lack thereof. He's an outcast from his own people. The only person he's friends with is a Rumelian, and even then, he's so much stronger than Rumelian that it doesn't really matter. But we see Dabura currently, I mentioned how, unlike Sukune, didn't get knocked through multiple buildings as Sukune did here, but Dabura does, in fact, end up in a building, and he's laying in the rubble. And he immediately, upon facing the first bit of challenge, goes, "You're amazing, Dura. I think I'm going to lose. It hurts. And I'm scared." And now, like I said, it just keeps getting. I don't think it's slander, but let me hit y'all with the W character writing of Doom and Despair. Or at least that's what I talk about. I don't know about y'all. There were many things, at least for me, that I will admit I was relatively prodigious in. I was a prodigy in an exception in a couple different ways in my youth. And I won't go fully into the analogy here, but let me just say, for the longest time, I never really had a challenge in strength. I never really had a challenge in intelligence either. I was practically, not necessarily unrivaled, but in terms of like my own local field, I didn't run into any of the rivals that would go on to help to find me later on. Speed, I was a fat kid though, so like ultimately, I can't say I was unrivaled in speed. And I wasn't one of the super fast kids, at least not initially. That was something that came later. But just put it into the idea of Dabura is a person who never struggled, who possibly never even felt pain before, who never even knew that losing could be something that could happen to him. He likely has never been hurt before. And notably, despite seemingly getting beasted on by Maharaga, he hasn't taken too much damage. Maybe I'm copious, but he hasn't taken too much damage. It's all damage on his face. Notably, his body's mostly unharmed, and blood is seemingly dripping from a head wound, but even the slash across his face was not drawn here. It should be drawn here, and we'll see it later, but like, even the slash across his face is not here. So, Dabura, who's never struggled a day before in his life, power-wise, finally feeling pain for the first time, probably would not be pleasant. It probably wouldn't be fun. Dabura stood unrivaled and untouchable, all the way until his adulthood as a full-grown man. Imagine feeling pain for the first time as a full-grown man. Imagine worrying about defeat or losing something for the first time as a full-grown man. Put it in your head. I'll get back to my own analogy and why I like Dabura so much and why someone relate to him later. As we see that Dabura in his youth, in the flashback, explains, "I always win, even somewhat effortlessly. Them harboring hatred and disregard for me pains my heart a little. I am a warrior, and I am immensely powerful, but I do not wish to fight." And this, I'll go into it in a sec. We see that Dura, upon hearing this proclamation from Dabura, laughs, going, "Now that's where you're wrong. I'm sure it's not that you don't want to fight. It's just that you never have fought before." And naturally, Dabura's like, what? I've put paws on so many people before, and they tried to put paws on me and failed. Huh? And Dabura brings up a very important point, and something that is very true. Possessing strength does not make you a warrior. And naturally, Dabura doesn't get it. And he even says, "I don't really get it." And Dura admits, I can only convey so much with mere words. I'm sure you'll get what I mean when you cross paths with a foe powerful enough to best you. And we see Maharaga absolutely gut-checking Dabura again and just beating the taste out of him. Or at least seemingly. Once again, Maharaga, he's okay. He's not like a pillow puncher. He's not a pillow puncher, alright? I feel like I have thrown around that term many a time before. But, like, he's not actually doing too much damage to Dabura, realistically speaking, despite getting all these free hits on him. And they basically are free hits, right? Dabura's not even attempting to guard or block or anything. He's having a revelation right now. He's getting beasted on, but he's not actually taking too much damage. Just bruises and stuff like that. But, also, Maharaga's sheath, the Blade of Extermination, or no, it actually is still here. He's just not using it on Dabura for some reason. And his bandages aren't drawn here. But, going back to what I was talking about earlier, I was forever unchallenged in strength. It wasn't something I never necessarily had to worry about. I was always the strongest in terms of just sheer physical strength. But you know what humbled me? You know what made me realize, even as a youth, that, oh, there are levels to it? One of my older cousins picked me up. Like I said, I was a fat kid. For him to simply grab me by the back of my shirt at my size, and I was like, I was a hefty boy, even at, I think I was like 8 when this happened. He just lifted me up off the ground and said, "Stop it." He shook me a little bit and he threw me away. Literally, like, straight, like obviously, maybe I'm dramatizing because I'm just like, I still remember the experience of getting tossed at that size. He threw me down. I rolled. I was like, oh, and it was crazy. I went and snitched on him. I was like, "Guys, pick me up." But like, that was a good humbling moment. And then a year after, another cousin just beat me up. I don't know. I was visiting home and then he just beat me up. I still remember that. He did. But those were necessary humbling moments. Because those were times where I realized, oh, my strength isn't absolute. Oh, I've never actually been. And of course, I think a subconscious part of me has always recognized, like, my parents as my physical superior, but I don't think I ever, like, viewed them as something. But my other beings that weren't my parents being so much physically stronger than me was something insane to me, something I never realized. And thusly, I didn't get it until I experienced it. Just like Dabura hasn't really understood what it means to fight, or what it means to even have all that strength. Having power does not make you a warrior. Me being strong didn't actually make me a fighter, or strong or capable or anything. And for those who don't get it on the physical side of things, I also never necessarily struggled too much intellectually. I was kind of just passively doing school stuff. I liked doing good at it. I liked getting A's and stuff like that and getting perfect scores on stuff because it made my dad and mom happy. And when they were happy, I got good food and things I asked for. So I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. This is easy. It was light work. I never got the idea of struggling or needing to study or anything like that. Everything, I'd hear it once, maybe twice at most if it was reiterated upon, and then I'd do just fine. I didn't even think about school. I didn't think about education too much. It was light work. It was easy. It was fodder. I could care less. I'd never been challenged. Did that make me smart? No, I just had a lot of information in my head. But then, I got to 7th grade. I got into algebra in 7th grade. By sheer miracle, mind you. The way we tested into algebra was like absolutely... I still remember that multiple choice test on that device, and I was like, I don't get it. I really don't understand how I even got here. And then it whooped me. It beat the taste out of me. I was genuinely bamboozled, thrown away, thrown off, and confused. I was like, what is this? Why do I not get it? What, like, the fact that something in my brain didn't register. Just as I had that physical realization years before that of like, oh, I'm not actually that strong nor good at things. I need to focus on getting stronger, even though that clearly didn't stick for a while. I only recently started focusing on getting stronger, capable now, and I still need to properly learn how to fight. But educationally, when I finally met a challenge, that is when I truly locked in. And that one I was like, oh wait, hold on. I've been good, but I could have been greater. I've been fine, but I could be better. It was when that spark was lit in me educationally, because it was something that challenged me. I feel like a life without challenge is true boredom, and a life without challenge leaves you unable to maximize your true potential. And let me be completely honest. I was never the strongest. I was never the fastest. I was never the smartest. Ever. There was always at least one guy stronger than me. I knew him, in fact. But at least young me didn't register that at the time until, I was picked up by my cousin. Then I actually went bothered to go test strength against a guy who's stronger than me, who I knew, and he was actually stronger than me at that time. I'm not sure which of us is stronger now. I still know him. But in terms of the speed thing, specifically, I think I was the fastest in middle school. Then I got viciously humbled in high school, and I actually finally did track and field. Like, oh, okay. It can keep happening where you have this diluted view of yourself, and it keeps getting shattered. But Dabura never had that. He never had the moment where he was picked up by the scruff of, basically the scruff. I just think of it as the scruff of my neck, but like realistically, he never had a moment where he was picked up by his shirt and tossed around. He never had a moment where he was just beat up. Never had a moment where his prowess was tested in any way, shape, or form. Because he always just had it. He had it. It was a hassle. It was whatever. He got it done. He completed it because he had to. And we see in this moment, as Maharaga beats the taste out of Dabura, draws blood from punches, knocks him around, seemingly grabs his earlobe and yanks him. Dabura says, I see it now. To fight because you wish to. to not fight because you don't want to. Neither of those were really a fight. Hey, could you protect the Rumelians? I'm sure you could, Dabura. Not to fight because you want to, but because you must. It is that idea of putting in effort because you have no other choice. It is something deep. It's something dangerous. I don't know. It's and it's funny, right? Because there are many things I technically do in life without direction, just consistently anyway, just for love of the game. Like, I don't necessarily have strength goals. I just want to get stronger. Like, I make content because I like to yap. I don't necessarily, like, I guess I have, like, loose goals and, like, more. But, like, that's the thing. It's so vague. But I think I'm able to do those things now because I had those moments where in order to compete, I had to get faster. I had to train in order to become top 4 for the team. And never became top 1. Never became top 3 fastest on the team when I was running. Never did. But I was in top 4 initially, and I trained to be top 4 because I had that direction. I had that goal. I had that need. What I had at that moment simply wasn't enough. What I was doing at that moment simply wasn't enough. So I went further. All the way back in 7th grade when I first was in algebra. I had it till I didn't. I needed. There was no choice. I must, in that moment, I had to study. I had to figure out how to study. I had to lock in Twin in order to make sure that I could keep my status as one of the smartest. I had to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. When you don't have those moments, it's hard to even realize what your limits are and then, heaven forbid, work to surpass them. But once you do, life becomes all the more satisfying. It becomes all the more fun in my mind. And of course, my situations were never life or death, right? I never needed to be the strongest in order to protect my life or anything like that. Obviously, my cousin beat me up. He didn't brutalize me. He was just like, oh! He beat me up, and then I remember I remember my mom finding me back there and being like, what happened? I was like, it was cousin. He beat the taste out of me. And then his mom beat him. It was hilarious. But regardless, without those moments, you don't really grow as much as you could. You don't realize what you could be, what you could do, until you're put in those situations where you must be more. And Dabura has finally found a situation where he must be more. Not to fight, like he says, not to fight because you wish to, not to fight because you don't wish to fight because you have to, because your life is on the line. Things beyond you are on the line. And Dabura has finally met that line. And in the face of that, he finally re-engages. He finally locks back in. And Maharaga, who was sending all these punches unanswered towards him, has his fist caught. I don't know why he put the blade away again. Oh, actually, I just realized, I'm stupid. Maharaga literally, the Sword of Extermination literally breaks. You can literally see it here. It shatters because Dabura catches Maharaga's fist. Shatters the Sword of Extermination. And we see Maharaga even have a moment of, wait. And we see Dabura admit, now that's what a real fight is. And those who are worthy of it are real warriors. Have you ever played soccer with your life on the line? putting your life on the line for something. Putting everything on the line for something. Truly figuring what you are and going even further beyond because you must in order to get what you need in this moment. That is what Dabura is finally experiencing. And this is where I think he differs from many of, well, to be fair though, in a way, he does kind of match a previous archetype somewhat. It's very loose. When we think of the two main identifiers and main people who are defined in original JJK as the strongest, it's Gojo and Sukuna. But note something about both of those characters. While we have very little context for Sukuna's history, we do know he grew up in the Heian era as a scorned child. Sukuna didn't pop out fully formed, 7 feet tall, 4-armed, dual mouth, perfectly knowing sword. No, Sukuna presumably had life and death battle after life and death battle after life and death battle over and over and over and over again. That's how he rose up to be what he was. He did not simply appear as the strongest. He became it through hard work and effort. Satoru Gojo was born fundamentally different from everybody else. So much more powerful that the very world itself began to grow in response to his existence. He was a living, breathing manifestation of a balance patch. But even still, he met at least a rival in Suguru Geto. And he wasn't complete yet. He wasn't perfect. Then he ran into Toji Fushiguro, someone who put him in this same scenario Maharaga's finally putting Dabura in, where his life was on the line, where he had nothing. If he did not figure out RCT in that moment, he was dead. Everything was placed there. He had that life or death battle. He had that experience that pushed him to reach that level beyond that he needed. But think of it even further, right? Not only did Dabura never have that experience, but Dabura never liked to fight. It wasn't something he wanted to do. It wasn't something he did out of pleasure. He is different from Gojo and Sukuna in that way. He's even different from the other slight manifestations of the strongest. Because as much as Gojo and Sukuna are the hardline confirmed ones, I throw 3 more characters in there. I throw Toji Fushiguro as a representation of the strongest. I throw Ryu Ishigori as another representation of the strongest. I throw Hajime Hashime as a representation of the strongest. But you know where Dabura stands separate from all 5 of those characters? He doesn't like to fight. He doesn't. And once again, to loop back around to maybe why I love Dabura so much and why he's probably my favorite Modulo character is because I never played football. For reference, you've seen the build. You've seen the... Oh! You've seen... Oh! No, you're spilling everywhere. No! No! Is it because I want to glaze the build? Please. Please. I just want to give myself a little bit of self-glaze. But I'm not saying I've always been built like this. Like, I'm literally the physically strongest I've ever been in my life at this point. I'm confident when I say that. I'm telling you, even like years ago, high school me was never cranking 80s in anything. Like 80s on each arm, that'd be unimaginable. What I can do now physically is completely different from what I could do physically back then. But everyone saw a vision in me doing something physical. I'm talking football, I'm talking wrestling. Some guys wanted me to box. Like I was sought after in terms of that physical capability, but I never wanted to do it. Never did. I'm not really interested. Luckily enough. And my parents were explicitly like, nope, don't do that. He has a brain. Heaven forbid he has that damaged. He'll just do other things. And I did do other things. So even if I wanted to, I never would have done football or wrestling or anything like that or boxing. But is in that sense where I never was interested in it. Could I have been good at it? Probably, maybe. I never ended up being actually that big. But still, I was big enough that it was notable in those days where it could have been useful. Who knows what kind of life I would have led then. But it wasn't something I was directly interested in. And I think that's what makes Dabura so different. And what reminds me, makes Dabura remind me of myself so much. The idea of you could be really, really good at something innately, but that doesn't mean you want to do it. I mentioned my friend before, who was really, really, really dumb, stupid, cracked at math in a dimension that I could never understand. He didn't want to do math, though. And that's that difference, where you're very good at something, but you don't even want to do it. Sukuna wanted to fight. He loved it. Gojo wanted to fight. He wanted to die a warrior's death on top of that. He loved it. Kashimo was a fighter at his core and loved fighting and gave out love in all kinds of ways. Ryu Shigori, fighter. Toji, fighter. They were all warriors in more of a way than Dabura Kadoba ever was. He never was interested in fighting. And now, even if he doesn't have an interest in it, now that he stands truly amongst the strongest, against someone who can actually push him, he's finally maybe getting a taste for that love of battle. Maybe getting a taste for that need for combat. And maybe finally understanding what it truly means to put one's life on the line. As we see, he catches Maharaga's fist, shatters the sword of extermination, and throws Maharaga back. Showing that, yeah, Maharaga was beasting on him. But this is why I say I don't think Maharaga had enough stats, because unless, I mean, like, you could argue it's like a mental fortitude thing, that like this mental fortitude determination suddenly gave Dabura a giga buff, but he casually overpowers Maharaga here. And notably, Maharaga even stands back, doesn't even begin to engage anymore. He's just like, if Maharaga could speak or think, he'd be like, the whole atmosphere's changed. As Dabura goes, hey, forgive me. From now on, I'll fight as I should have. And we get the narrator statement. Dabura's technique, blank and light. However, Dabura's body couldn't withstand the acceleration of light itself. He had never achieved light speed before. Now, this does raise a question. Like, and this is one thing I do want to see the officials. What about his attacks? Are his attacks light speed? Please. Maharaga, react after a light beam is fired at you. Please, Maharaga, please. I need the upscale. Especially if you're as strong as Meguraga. I need the upscale. But, regardless, he had never achieved light speed before. If he completely... Oh, but then Dabura says to himself, if he completely disregards my technique, then there's one thing left for me to do. I'll pummel him to death until these fists of mine crumble and wither away. I will shatter the limits of my body and bring it to its absolute potential. Dura, warriorhood awaits me. The dance of Dabura Kanaba, near the speed of light, beyond the limits of humanity. The voltage ramps up. I'm sorry. It's just so good. It's just so good. I love Dabura. I love Dabura because he still fits into the strongest archetype. He's still, everything I've said about Dabura in the past still works. And it's elated by the fact that he doesn't want to fight. He doesn't like to fight. But now he is given a reason where he has to, where he must. Where if he doesn't, not just he will die, but his sister will die. The people that he promised to protect, the friend that he lost who entrusted his people to him, he will let him down. Everything is now put on the line for Dabura Kanaba to risk his body, risk his life, risk his physical form against an opponent who has adapted to everything he has had to offer so far. And seeing his ability to stand firm, to stand resolute, after being challenged for the first time in his life, it just tickles his soul, bro. It just tickles his soul. It's so good. It's so good. The chapter is so gas. And, man, I don't know. I think Dabura just speaks to me, man. He speaks to me in a way that other characters have spoken to me before, but Dabura, he just hits different. And in this case, he got hit different. So, obviously, scaling-wise, Dabura, we're gonna have to knock him down a couple pegs. But, like, depending on how this light speed stuff goes, if we can get a percentage of the speed of light he's moving at. Like, I wouldn't even mind if next chapter, on the scaling side of things, right, completely ignoring the character work, because I know Dabura's gonna get slandered this chapter, but, like, the character work for Dabura in this chapter is immaculate, right? But, very specifically, the ideas for the scaling side of things, if we can get a statement of Dabura Kanaba is now moving at 1% the speed of light, Dabura Kanaba is now moving at 5% the speed of light, like, if we can just get percentage after percentage after percentage, if we can get that, we can still have Dabura in top 3. We can still have him in top 3. Obviously, him being confirmed to not have any RCT, or at least not seemingly, he's just very, very bulky. By the end, you still see he has the initial slash from Mahoraga on his face, and while his head wound has seemingly cleared up, it's clear he was bleeding from his head, so, like, Mahoraga was able to at least damage him, which is more than can be said for Sugana, who never got damaged by Mahoraga. That was 15-finger Yuji Kuna. Regardless, Dabura still, if he can get, like, the actual speed feats, he'd just be above literally everything. He'd be above everyone, even the characters with, like, domains and RCT and stuff like that. He would just light beam blitz blow their domes open. So, Dabura can still be top 3 in the verse, but it's pretty much hardline confirmed he cannot really be top 1 or top 2. Like, he just can't be. He doesn't really have the... Seemingly, he doesn't really have the stats to keep up with the top 2, especially with RCT speed and domains in consideration. But overall, I'm so happy for Dabura as a character, bro. So happy for Dabura as a character. I love his journey and his understanding and his first display of weakness. I think everyone needs it. Everyone needs to be humbled. There's some people who've never been humbled, and shout out to them. They're crack monsters who I have absolute faith in, and I'm very interested to see how life treats them in terms of, like, literally the better ways. Like, I'm very interested to see how certain people are able to go on never being challenged in life. But for Dabura to finally experience challenge, to finally feel alive in a way, because I think, and this may be a me thing, I think a life without challenge, it doesn't make you less human, but I feel like it's a challenge and struggle is a core part of the human experience. I think I wouldn't be me without the struggles I experience physically, academically, mentally, generally, like the many different struggles, self-imposed and otherwise. I don't think I wouldn't exist without those struggles. And I'm very interested to see the person that Dabura Kanaba turns into now that he's finally experienced a struggle for the first time in his life. And a struggle that's not born of somebody else's weakness but his own. I'm very excited to see how this goes. But, of course, this is a long behind review. If you haven't always seen this video, please do me a favor and leave Dance of Dawn in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that link to notifications so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you're going to have a picture down below. You support me for as well as one, get a month, get exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as well as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the 36-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad-free variations of all my videos, early ad-free access to all my videos, early ad-free access to not just all my videos here on the main channel, but all my videos on the second channel. That guy with the direct shown where I drop 45-minute to hour-long reaction videos every Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. You get early access to those as well. On top of that, you get your name listed at the end of literally every single video I produce. If you are a $3 member, $3 patron or higher, you get your name listed and read aloud at the end of every single video I produce. On top of that, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below, where you can drop 5 beans to a short video or 25 beans to a long video. And on top of that, any beans at all are always appreciated. And I do have my Twitch link down below, that got the controller. I stream every Friday at 8 p.m. EST. We have wonderful times with there. We yap, we chat, and it's even thanks to them that I'm doing this review at the time I did with the unofficials, as I typically just wait for the officials. But overall, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, J2MA, Guillaume, Pura Ura, Enzo, Yuki Ally, Grim, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Romano Furen, Dino, Hector Gonzalez, Tim Thomas, Kaving, Julian Perez, RXN, Nevis97, Logan Guzman, Dead Meme, Karu Deer, Christian Carter, Keon Stewart, Donovan McIntosh, Sino King, Hamza Idrisi, BNA DNA, Edwin Igbinoba, Straw, Athenzi Shear, Antavius Mitchell, Azo2404, Superflame Zero, Weary Exile, Window Life, Alex Kenny, Victor Jacobs, Todd, Dre, Axis XC, The Practical One, Aswin Hedi Presetia, JMD KD, Devi Pesiet, Landon Clapwick, Heath Nelson, CAET, Funny Dude, Jagoda, Plant Crone, Striker Man, Brandon Payne, Black Sage, and Multi-Batman Superman. Then I'll leave a thank you to Artline Art Tier patrons: A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, Dread Zoen, Midnight Lord 21, CJ, and Karina Hernandez. Then I'll leave a thank you to our Ink Tier members: King RTX, Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06, and Zom. Then I'll give a thank you to our Digital Art Tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a final thank you to our Colored Art Tier patrons: Walking Munoz and Walkie Munoz.